Okay, let me try this in German. Hallo, hier ist Paulo Leite, Plattensammler. Dir ist der dritte Teil meines Besuchs im M2 in München und in diesem Video erkunde ich die Vinylsammlung. How about that? Yes, now we'll be talking about vinyl. M2's vinyl collection is organized pretty much in the same way of their CD collection. Let's start with their funk, soul and disco section. One of the challenges when buying used vinyl is to know if an album is an original release or a cheap compilation. A lot of people think vintage vinyl always sounds great. Well, I'm sad to say this is one big misconception. You know, back in the day before the CDs, when vinyl was the dominant format, the competition wasn't about who sounded better. It was about who was cheaper. If you were in 1980 and you wanted to buy a record by James Brown, Ray Charles, Frank Sinatra, or any other artist with a large discography, unless you knew exactly which title you wanted, and very few people did, it is very likely you would buy an inferior sounding compilation of that artist. Back in those days, although many artists and record labels did try to make their latest albums sound great, the quality of the reissues of older catalog titles and compilation titles was always sacrificed for the sake of price. Oh, Machine Gun, the legendary 1974 album by the Commodores. This was their first album and it is brilliant in every way. When I was a teenager, I fell for low-quality vinyl many times. I remember I bought an album with famous songs from movies. One track was a cover of Phil Collins' 1984 classic Against All Odds, Take a Look at Me Now. The record label probably did not have the money to get the original Phil Collins master recording. So they created a cover that did not even sound like Phil Collins. Every time the drums started, the needle on my turntable jumped. This was an issue I could never solve. I tried applying maximum weight on the needle, and I even tried different turntables. The problem persisted. That was clearly a very low quality work. I've Got the Music in Me from 1975 by Thelma Houston featuring Pressure Cooker. I love this one. It was recorded live to master disc, and it does sound great. Fame from 1978 by Grace Jones. This was her second album. Do or Die is a great song, and the album is filled with great songs. Also, Inside Story from 1986. This one produced by Nile Rodgers and Grace Jones. Living My Life from 1983, her last album on the Compass Point Studios trilogy. Wow, they even have Sex Drive from 1993. That is awesome. Claudine from 1974, the movie soundtrack by Gladys Knight and the Pips. Beautiful album with songs written by Curtis Mayfield. Van McCoy and his Magnificent Movie Machine from 1977. This was the kind of album that was only possible during the 70s. If You Let Me Love You from 1984 by Billy Preston. This 12-inch contains the longer version that is quite rare. If you are enjoying this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I have plenty of great records and record shops to show you. Thanks. The sections regarding vinyl pretty much mirror the CD collection. I'm a huge fan of the stylistics. Russell Tompkins Jr. has such a great voice. No Limit on Love, 1974 by Barry White. This was his first compilation. And this is an example of what I was just talking about. A less knowledgeable buyer may think this is a studio album, when in fact, it's just a compilation. This one sounds good, but it's an exception. M2's rock and pop section is awesome. thousands upon thousands of vinyl records. Let's look at 60s and 70s rock. As you can see, the collection takes this entire row. There's so much to choose from, but it doesn't take too long until I strike gold. X-Rated, 1975 by Black Oak, Arkansas. They were amazing. I would say they were Southern rock at its best. They charted several albums in the 70s, and I love this one. Lots of Beatles, plus solo albums by Paul, John, George, and Ringo. I Can See Your House From Here, 1979 by Camel. This cover is an homage to a painting by Salvador Dali titled Christ of St. John of the Cross. The band had a new lineup for this album. Practically the entire Chicago studio albums can be found here. All artists are impeccably organized. Ah, those Germans! Big Hits, High Tide and Green Grass from 1966 by the Rolling Stones. I think this is the 1971 gatefold version. The first UK pressing of this album used blue titles on the cover to indicate it was the mono version. A cover with green titles indicated the stereo version. You know, I have visited dozens and dozens of record shops all over the world, and I recently made a video about two of them that were about to close. One in Washington, D.C., and the other one in Berlin. And sometimes I wonder, what makes a record shop great? Well, one thing is for sure, the quality of its collection. Whether it's CD or vinyl, I would say the collection must be great. M2 is clearly on such league. Yes, they have lots of albums, and most of them could be trash. But here, there is very little trash. Most of these are indeed great artists with their studio albums, first pressings, and good reissues. Which means that if you are looking for a particular band or artist, there is a big chance you will find here the album you are looking for and a quality version of it. Now, I also have been to several record stores that carry lots of trash. And they can also be great record stores, but they offer a different shopping experience. Usually their prices are lower for everything, and you have to spend a lot of time digging through the trash to find something great. But that's not the case here. In fact, I think M2 kinda has the best of both worlds. A great collection and competitive prices. I will probably make a follow-up video showing all the CDs I bought here. Oh, Unborn Child, 1974 by Seals and Crofts. It's a beautiful album. €10, a bargain. James Seals and Dash Crofts were brilliant songwriters. They had it all. Their lyrics were amazing and the melodies were beautiful. They're kinda ignored today, but that's a huge mistake. A colossal mistake, because they are great. James Seals died in 2022, but I think Mr. Crofts is still with us. Well, Mr. Crofts, this video is dedicated to you. It's always a privilege to find such a great album. Oh my god, a 1976 vintage Peter Frampton Comes Alive tour jacket. How cool is that? Now let's look at their pop section. This maxi single, Always on My Mind, 1987 by the Pet Shop Boys, contains a dub version of the song that remained unreleased on CD for years. Here's an Alan Parsons box containing 4 albums. This is a German edition, I think, from 1981. Glass Houses, 1980 by Billy Joel. Great album. It's still rock and roll to me. On the last video, I showed the CD edition of H2O, 1982 by Hall & Oates. Here's the vinyl version. If you ever saw them live, you are one lucky person. Most of us will never have the pleasure of seeing them together again in the same room. Well, unless that room is at the courthouse, where I'm pretty sure they will be screaming at each other. Oh, Penthouse and Pavement, 1981 by Heaven 17. This is their debut album. The song We Don't Need This Fascist Groove Thing was banned by the BBC, and I don't know why. Did we ever need a fascist groove thing? Oh, and this album was recorded at Monumental Studios in Sheffield, where the Human League was recording their classic album There, but on different shifts. The Kick Inside, 1978, Kate Bush's first album. Now we move to melodic rock, and again, the classification sounds weird, but I see here a predominance of bands whose at least half of their output was post-70s. This probably explains why we'll find Jefferson Airplane on the 60s and 70s rock, while Jefferson Starship is found here. But to me, it's irrelevant because I will look everywhere. Going to the back of the shop, we'll find indie rock, and the collection is awesome. Boys Don't Cry, 1980. This was The Cure's first compilation, and the one to include the title song that was never released as part of their studio albums. I am a big Ian Dury fan. He was brilliant, fearless, daring, a perfect example of what the British 70s rock scene was all about. Quiet Life, 1979 by Japan. They had such a sophisticated sound. No More Heroes from 1977 by The Stranglers. This is a great album. The Stranglers were always lots of fun. This Talking Heads maxi single from 1983 contains long versions of Slippery People and I Get Wild, Wild Gravity that were not on the studio album. They were released on CD though. Now let's take a look at their heavy metal collection. Classic Sabotage, 1975 by Black Sabbath. I love this one. I confess, at first I did not understand why they subdivide pop rock, 60s and 70s rock, and melodic rock, but after exploring the full collection, it becomes clear. Their collection is so large, it's hard to keep everything consolidated. I mean, if you need to make space for 20 newly arrived albums under the letter M, it becomes easier if you only have to move the rest of the albums in one subsection, instead of having to move the entire rock collection. So beyond trying to make the artists easier to find, it makes the collection more easily manageable and consolidated. Now let's talk about jazz. Just like with the CDs, this collection is awesome. Tons of classic titles, some of them never available on CD. Sing Along with Basie, 1959 by Count Basie and his orchestra. Beautiful vocals by Lambert, Hendricks and Ross and Joe Williams. Find Out, 1985 by the Stanley Clarke Band. I think this is the only album Stanley Clarke signs as a band. Wow, Level 1, 1975 by the 11th House featuring Larry Coryell. They were a fabulous fusion jazz band. They started in 1972 and disbanded in 1975. Although they didn't last long, they recorded great stuff. Sketches of Spain, 1960. Quintessential Miles Davis. This is the stereo version. Stereophonic sound was introduced on the LP format in 1957. For a few years after that, most releases were still in mono, but many high-profile artists had their releases both in mono and stereo. I think it took some 8 years until stereo LPs started to outsell mono LPs, and the release of albums in both versions pretty much ended around 1968. Oh, Man and Woman, 1974 by George Freeman. What a beautiful album! George Freeman was born on April 10th, 1927, and he's still with us. I think last year, around his birthday, he led a couple of shows in Chicago. Mr. Freeman, this video is also dedicated to you. Lena Horne, The Lady and Her Music, 1981. This was originally a Broadway musical review written for her, but the album soundtrack was produced by the one and only Quincy Jones. Terry Gibbs from 1956. This is an album of a rare elegance. And here's another brilliant musician who's still with us. Terry Gibbs was born on October 13th, 1924, which means he's 100 years old, and he recorded way over 50 albums. Well, Mr. Gibbs, this video is also dedicated to you. Another gem, Herbie Harper featuring Bud Shank and Bob Gordon, 1956. As far as I know, this album was never released on CD. It contains a beautiful version of Summertime. This is an unusual album because Herbie Harper was a trombonist, and here he brings two sax players. On side A, Bud Shank, and on side B, Bob Gordon. On classical vinyl, the collection has many great titles. Richard Strauss' Symphonie Domestica is notoriously hard on the horns, and you should try listening to it on multi-channel. This is in fact one of my favorite quadraphonic albums. It's great to find it here. I am a big fan of Wilhelm Kempff, and this is a great Beethoven recording. M2 also has a great number of classical music box sets. I think vinyl enthusiasts frequently overlook these collections. Most of them are still in pristine condition. I mean, you buy a Rolling Stones album from the 70s or the 80s, and it comes with already thousands of plays. But not these boxes. These are long works people don't listen to every day. I suspect most of these were played 20 times at best. Now they are available for 10 or 15 euros. Wow! Organ Orgy, 1975 by Anthony Newman. He is a brilliant organist, harpsichordist, pianist, composer, conductor with over 200 albums released. This is a beautiful album recorded in New York City. The sound of this recording is spectacular. And for 6 euros, it's... oh, come on. And by the way, the CD is very hard to find. Another treasure, Narciso Yepes playing Joaquín Rodrigo's Aranjuez concert. A gorgeous recording from 1959 that, I think, was never released on CD. There's also plenty of new age, electronica, and reggae, and they are all located here. And here we have movie soundtracks. Oh, Billeties, 1977. This is a French erotic drama with beautiful music by Francis Lai. Crawl Space, 1986, music by Pino Donaggio. Lolita, 1962, the notorious film with soundtrack by Nelson Riddle and Bob Harris. There are so many great soundtracks here, just like the CD section. The number of European soundtracks is amazing. Listomania, music by Rick Wakeman and Roger Daltrey. Oh, nothing can go wrong when Ringo Starr plays the Pope. There's a generous amount of exotica and easy listening. The singles section is beautifully well organized in labeled boxes. Most record shops just throw all the singles together, but not here. Here you know exactly where to find what. And never forget to look under the displays because there are more singles, also organized by genre. The prices are great and there is great stuff there. There are also male singers. Their Elvis collection is quite good, with lots of vintage albums. And female singers, just like on the CD collection. Here's country music. And plenty of European artists too. I spent a great day shopping at M2. This is one of the best used record stores in Europe, and its collection is so well curated and diverse, I had to cover as much as I could. I love record shops and I love buying records, so the moment I arrived in Munich, I knew I have to visit M2. You should pay them a visit and make sure you have time because going through this collection is a pleasure, and your collection will certainly grow. And you should be here with me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. There is more great content coming soon. Thank you.